history and all these disciplines were dominated by the people who were dominating at the time, right? So who was that? White men. That's just the reality of the situation.
Right.
So once you actually, and so when they're studying the Orient, when they're studying, countries across Asia, across Africa, when they're studying women, when they're studying anything, they're doing it from their own vantage point. And when suddenly there's an influx of those actual people studying themselves, it becomes a little bit different.
That's the perfect example.
But you would also see that the ignorance, of course, serves a function, because the ignorance often is advantageous to those who hold power. And I'm not only talking about political power, I'm also talking about those who have run this show in academia. And then suddenly people like me, who has a Dutch mom and an Algerian dad, or people like Assal, who's an Iranian American, come into the academia and they start to really, really question the fundamentals of all these assumptions that these our how can you say that, academic ancestors had. You know what I mean? I also think that really plays a role. It's the diversification of, and I'm going to say this, ethnic American, or sorry, indigenous Americans and indigenous Europeans. And why I'm saying indigenous, I'm saying people who are right now born on the soil of the United States, or born on the soil of the Netherlands or any other Western country, who have a diverse background ethnically, but who are from those countries. And these really start to question all these assumptions that seem so normal in our countries and our academia, because it was so homogenous before. You know what I mean? What do you think about that, Assal?
I definitely think that, yeah, when you have people who look, so history and all these disciplines were dominated by the people who were dominating at the time, right? So who was that? White men. That's just the reality of the situation.
Right.
So once you actually, and so when they're studying the Orient, when they're studying, countries across Asia, across Africa, when they're studying women, when they're studying anything, they're doing it from their own vantage point. And when suddenly there's an influx of those actual people studying themselves, it becomes a little bit different, because the way that they see it is a little bit different, right?
Yes.
You don't see it through the lens of your own domination. In fact, you see it the opposite, right? You see it through the lens of your own repression, right? Like your own persecution, your own having been colonized, having lost something within like the fabric of your being through this experience. And that is the opposite approach. And so that it often has challenged the mainstream narratives. And so absolutely, yeah, you see, and you have seen historically like backlash, where you have sort of academic debates and really like personal feuds, because, if anything that, messes with the status quo will bother the people who benefit from that status quo. That's essentially what it always is, right? Like the really, like the origin of the idea of being a conservative is to literally conserve things the way that they are. And you only do that when it benefits you to do so. But when it doesn't, you want to naturally change it. So it's funny, in these discussions about like white privilege in the United States, there's always these arguments about things like reverse racism. And it's like, well, that can't exist, because you would have to invert the entire system of race and create a different dominant class and make white people inferior in that new structure in order for there to actually be such a thing as reverse racism. And what they don't realize is, if they think that they're giving up something, they are. But what they're giving up is an advantage, the privilege. They're not becoming less equal now. They're just having to be actually equal versus having an advantage the entire time. And trying to explain that difference is challenging, because on one hand, when you see someone who's white, who's defending that privilege, that is actually how they see it. I mean, they see themselves losing something. And to a certain extent, you have to accept the fact that they are. But what they're losing is an unfair advantage that was gained through, all the wonderful things we always talk about: colonialism, genocide, slavery, pillage. Like that's what gained your advantage, not just ingenuity of your minds. And that's the problem, again, when you only have a historical perspective that goes so far back. Everybody can pick their own starting point. When they were at the peak of civilization, it's like, well, I'm going to start at this year. Even history, even time, all of it is a construct. Like why we exist in the year that we exist is a construct. And these are the things that I think, from like a very broad public position, it's more difficult for people to, again, digest and understand, because we are so stuck in our present moment and understanding the society around us as just, this is what's normal, because this is the only thing that we've experienced.
Yeah, yeah. Your words are like almost you're answering the things that are in my brain. I love it. I don't know, Peter, you want to say something?
Yeah, it just reminded me of something Paulo Freire said about the reaction of the former oppressor when the oppressed gain a little bit of equality or gain a little bit of power. I wish I could remember the whole line, but it's something like, in the past, you could go to a concert hall and hear Mozart. You could go and buy airplane tickets and travel around the world. You could have a maid at home. But now that those people, some of them are able to go to college, some of them are able to hear Mozart, some of them are able to travel. That doesn't feel like other people losing their chains. It feels like you being chained. So the reaction among the in the minds of the formerly dominant tends to see the decrease in their relative power, which is real. Like relatively speaking, their power is lower to the people that they used to utterly dominate. They interpret that as oppression, and you can see that all over the world.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. They interpret just having someone have not even equal, right? Not even equal, but just less dominance over another group as oppression. And that's why it's so frustrating when, you hear those debates occur in not just in domestically in the US, but the US, vis-a-vis sort of any foreign entity.